There's currently, I think the statistics are something like 65% of the workforce is currently thinking of leaving the industry. We've got more people.
Why now? Why do you think this could be the year that starts to be a catalyst for change?
The gap in productivity growth over those 30 years between construction and other major industries is 33%. That is our opportunity. So just on its own, $60 billion, massive number. But you could convert that to people. And if you converted that to people, you go,
picture this. It's 2025. The Australian construction industry is at a crossroads. Rising costs, crippling skills shortages, and a relentless demand for sustainability are pushing companies to the edge. The old ways of doing business are no longer enough. Those who innovate and adapt will thrive. Those who don't risk falling behind. But in the midst of this change, there are leaders fighting to reshape our future. Leaders like today's guest, Jon Davies. As CEO of the Australian Constructors Association, Jon has a front row seat to the biggest transformations happening in our industry. He's here to share not just the challenges we face, but the solutions that will redefine how we build in the years ahead. Welcome to the Building Doors podcast.
thank you for having me.
I want to start with a little bit around your career in the construction industry, because I think that's obviously shaped a lot of what you know and have experienced personally that has led to you having the knowledge and expertise you do in your role. So talk us through your experience and how you grew to come into the role you're in today as the CEO of ACA.
Well, it's quite interesting, actually, Lauren. I mean, it's a bit of a case study in always being open to opportunities, I suppose. And this is something that I now tell my kids and say, always be open to opportunities. I mean, I started out, as you can probably gather by the accent, from the UK as a quantity surveyor for John Lang's, as before John Lang's went at trouble. Ray O'Rourke bought them famously for £1. And then I got into big roles, and I bought a house in the UK. And you're thinking, this should be it. Happy days. But there was something just an itch that needed to be scratched still there, and I wanted to work overseas. And so I looked around, and it's not back then. It wasn't like it is now, where it's relatively easy to get work overseas if you want to. Back then, everyone was saying, you need to have previous overseas experience. I'm going, well, how do I do that? How do I break through? Anyway, long story short, I got a job on a project in Abu Dhabi. This is before internet, before you could Google Abu Dhabi. Can I get a beer there? Are there women there?
Important things to know.
Really important things to know when you're 26 and still single. Yeah. And jumped on a plane, and I think the reason why they were looking for people was it was a very glamorous project. It was upgrading the Abu Dhabi sewage pumping network back in the day. So anyway, moved there and ultimately met my wife.
There were women there.
There were women there, and there were lots of midwives there, and we moved briefly to Australia in the run up to the Olympics. Did some work there. Moved to Singapore, moved back to the Middle East, back to Dubai, just as Dubai was going nutso, or just then, and then decided, time to settle down, and didn't want to go back to the UK, so came back to Australia, and worked for Tier 1 contractors for all of my time until about 10 years ago, when went out on my own, and ultimately, and that's the point where I started to think, after 30 plus years of contracts and commercial, which is all just this, it's constant confrontation, it's claims, it's arguments all of the time, that there's got to be a better way. And maybe now is the opportunity to do something about that. And at that time, someone came knocking and said, Jon, if I'm made president of Queensland Major Contractors Association, would you be interested in being our first CEO? And I said, yeah, why not? And I did that for a number of years, and I was thinking about going back into industry again. And along came COVID, and like everyone, it changed so many things. And I thought, we're never going to have a better opportunity to change the construction industry. The industry was being kept open; it was being seen as a way to keep people employed when other industries were shut, and this was an opportunity to say, okay, well, maybe we can use this to leverage this to get change in the industry. I started to try to advocate for that from here in Queensland. And as much as people who live in Queensland think that Queensland's the centre of the universe, unfortunately, from an advocacy perspective, it's not. And so I got on to the Australian Constructors Association and basically says, what the blinking heck are you doing about it? I don't see you out there. You're not advocating for change. And they said, well, funny you should say that, John. We've just taken a decision to be more outwardly focused, and to we're looking to employ a full-time CEO, and we're just in shortlisting phase, but it's not too late to throw your hat in the ring if you're interested in that. Always remember this was a Friday afternoon conversation, and I'm thinking, be careful what you wish for here, John. But anyway, I thought if I'm serious about this, I should throw my hat in the ring, and so I did. And 4.5 years later, here I am. So that's how I came to be in this role.
When you took that role, there's always that moment when you go, here, I've got an opportunity to change things and shift things up. What are some of the things you were wanting to change or really impact in the role?
Oh, gosh. How do I answer that question? Everything. Everything. I mean, there are so many opportunities to improve our industry. The basis of our industry, it's a fantastic industry. I mean, we build stuff. We make things happen. We solve complex problems every single day. It's a fantastic, exciting industry to be in. But we also work very long hours. The culture isn't great. We've got that adversarial stuff going on all of the time. We're struggling to make money. We don't have anywhere near enough women in our industry. We don't care enough about the environment. We still think Excel spreadsheets are the height of technology. There's so many opportunities to get better.
Okay, so looking at one of the things you've spoken about before, which I'd love to touch on, is you said this could be the year for change, with some of the pressures we're really facing and some of the things you spoke about in terms of skills shortages, rising supply costs, labour costs, all of it, this perfect storm and all this work, particularly in Queensland, if I'm honest, that's coming. Why now? Why do you think this could be the year that starts to be a catalyst for change?
To your point, I think it's that realization that the amount of infrastructure we're being asked to build as an industry, whether it be here in Queensland, whether it be in any other jurisdiction in Australia, it's constantly going up. Yes, it sort of fluctuates a little bit here and there, but the overall trend is up. And yet the size of our workforce is continuing to shrink. There's currently, I think the statistics are, something like 65% of the workforce is currently thinking of leaving the industry. We've got more people leaving the industry than joining the industry. Some of that is to do with broader issues, the demographic time bomb, that where the aging population, something that we've been talking about for a long period of time now, that is finally coming to pass, and we're seeing that across the economy. But when you then factor in and overlay the other issues that I talked about, the fact that we work long hours, the fact that we are still seen as a technological laggard, that we don't care about the environment, these are all things that the next generation of workers are going, well, hang on a sec, that's actually important to me. And so I'm not going to look to join the industry. I'm going to go and do something else. And that those sort of those issues are now making us realize, I mean, we've realized for a little while, I've certainly been aware of this for a little while, but more importantly, our clients are going, hang on a sec here, we've got a bit of a problem. If we want to build the stuff that we want to build, and if you're talking about governments that the voting public wants us to build, then we're going to have to do things differently. And this realization, I mean, there'll be people will listen and watch this podcast that say, well, hang on a second, we've known that for ages. Well, maybe, but some of us within the industry have seen that, but our clients are only really just cottoning onto that now. And they are the ones, especially government, that are going to be in a position, because of the volume of work that they procure, in the position to actually change stuff that will feed throughout the industry.
Excellent. So one of the things that you signified there or talked about was the cultural shift, right? And that obviously this catalyst with, having all this work to do and coming from the clients can shift that. What are you hoping, or what would some of the actions need to be at that client level to enact the change we need to see culturally?
Yeah, look, I think there's a few things here. This is a good segue to talk about the Industry Culture Task Force.
Yeah.
And so that, there's a clue in the name there, what that's all about. And essentially that's a recognition that as an industry, there's certain things that we can do ourselves to help ourselves. And we are actually, I can come back to that later, we are doing some stuff there. But there's a whole bunch of stuff that can only be driven by clients. So if we wanted to, as an industry, say, come together and say, you know what, we're all going to say we're not going to price our jobs with people working more than 50 hours a week. We can't actually do that. The ACCC will come down on us like a ton of bricks. Anti-competitive behavior, can't do that. But there's nothing to say and stop our clients saying, right, everyone that's bidding this job, you're not going to work more than 50 hours a week. So the culture standard looks to set out some of these things and looks to drive improvements in time for life, well-being, and diversity and inclusion in the industry. And so that is something that's happening from a client perspective, and that culture standard is out for consultation at the minute. So anyone that's listening to this can go look it up, cultureinconstruction.com.au. You can go and find it. You can go and comment on it. And I encourage everyone to do that. The other thing that they can do, importantly, to change the adversarial culture in the industry is to move the focus away from bidding just on price, that race to the bottom, and moving towards considering value more broadly when they're assessing tenders. And governments, you'd think that they would do that. And they say that they do that. They say, we're going to give a weighting for ideas around environmental sustainability. We're going to include weightings in the tender for Indigenous engagement and for local content and all of these things, which is good, but we need to see that next step. We need to see evidence that they're walking the talk there. We need to see tender assessments that show that it isn't necessarily the lowest price that gets the gig. And as soon as we start to see that, what we believe will happen is cost won't be the focus anymore, at least not the sole focus. And we'll start to see profit margins starting to rise. We'll start to see companies actively looking to improve and focus on other areas. And as a result, we'll see the industry culturally lifting is what we believe.
Excellent. So if we look at that and we look at that shift that would happen at a client level, what then do you think that would do to diversity and inclusion? And do you think some of the changes around the cultural shift would naturally improve that?
Yeah, I mean, let's look at the reasons why we don't have 13-14% of the workforce is women. That's it. Blue collar, 3%. It's pretty average, to be honest with you. Well, it's worse than average. Pretty poor. But you say, well, what are the barriers to that? And that's what the Culture Task Force looked at. And they saw time for life being hours of work, being inflexible hours of work, being a particular problem. And how can we do something to address that? The adversarial nature, the blokey culture of the industry it puts people off. The industrial relations strife that we've seen of late in the media puts people off. So how can we start to pick away at some of those things? So the time for life element, as I say, that's in the culture standard. We do something about that. As ACA, we're looking to introduce flexible working with all of our members, and doing a lot of work on that. The cultural piece, though, the adversarial nature, stuff like that is going to take time.
Yeah.
And it's a wee bit of a chicken and egg, isn't it? Because I think we all know that if there were more women in the industry, we'd have less of this confrontation within our industry. But to get more women in, we need to get rid of some of that confrontation. So, it's going to take a little bit of time.
So I'm glad you touched on that as well, because while we're advocating for change at a client level, one of the things I was curious about is your thoughts around how do we as an industry, in terms of the leadership perspective, how do we start to shift the culture at that grassroots level as well, at the contractor level, in projects, in on site? What are some of the things that you've identified through that study, or things that can help?
It's a bit like safety, I think. Mm-hmm. We had a big a transformation in terms of safety in our industry over the last 20 years. And there was this concept called behavioral safety. It's making it front and center of everything that we do, our behaviors. It's that old safety is only as good as what you're prepared to walk past. It is, if we can apply the same principles to culture on site, to behaviors that we're prepared to accept on site. And it needs people at a senior level to call stuff out and say, you know what, hey, no, that's not good enough. And that is going to take some effort. It's going to take some courage, particularly. But that is what we need. And that we are starting to see people recognize that we have to change, because that culture is not only putting women off joining the industry, it's putting men off joining the industry as well. I mean, let's face it, who wants to go to work to have a blue every day and to be in that sort of highly confrontational environment? There's not that many people that actually do like that. So this applies equally across all genders in terms of the importance of changing the culture.
Absolutely. One of the questions I was curious about in terms of when you spoke about that culture and adversarial nature, what about things, where there can be blame? Something goes wrong on a project, somebody's got to be held to account, somebody needs to be blamed. How do we move away from having scapegoats, or having people that a project director or a commercial manager, or that was he or she's fault on that job? How do we move away from that and into a different mindset around how we approach lessons learned and looking at projects?
Yeah, I mean, that's another really good question. And that's something that absolutely has to happen. I mean, we can talk about collaborative contracts, for example, and I know there'll be a lot of people listening, yeah, everyone loves each other, and because of that, there's no accountability, and with no accountability, we don't learn lessons, we don't get better. I think that there is a bit of that, but I think there's something in between. And I think the important thing, and this is something we're going to be talking more as an industry association, is a recognition that we're all in this together. To get what I want out of this, you've got to get what you want as well.
Yeah.
And just apportioning blame and seeing someone suffer as a result of it, a typical site situation. You say, "Oh, you're behind here. I'm going to liquidated damages. I'm going to apply liquidated damages to your contract." Do you think that's going to incentivize them to hurry up? Do you think that's going to lead to better outcomes on the job? Do you think it might lead to them cutting corners? Do you think that might lead to them going bust? If they go bust, what sort of position are you in there? You're out there in the market trying to find someone else to finish that job. No way you're going to finish that job on time now. So there needs to be a recognition that as an industry, it's interlinked. We're all tied together here. We all are dependent on each other for our own success. And I think that back to what is different this year to in previous years, I think I can hear these pennies drop around the place now, where people are going, you know what? That is true. We're only going to get what we want if we all start working together better.
Absolutely. The other thing we've spoken about before, and when you're talking around the hours, well-being as well, and keeping people in the industry, men and women, I do know a big challenge because I talk to people in the industry every day is when you have children, when you have a family, mums and dads. Like, we've got so many parents and both in the workforce now. What does that mean if you both? I don't know the statistics, but I know there's a high amount of people that, because of the nature of work, they get in relationships and they meet through construction too. So then you've got two parents kind of working long hours, and that's where on occasion we can lose someone to the industry. So my question is around, so as we're working on that, level of looking at the cultural shift from the client lens, what about modern methods in construction? What are some of the things we can be doing or looking at to get better productivity?
Lots.
I know what you like to talk about.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. The problem would be getting me to shut up.
It's okay. We've got time. Everyone's listening in. They're here for it.
The good thing is that we know how to be more productive, and which is good, because as an industry, we are now less productive than we were 30 years ago. So the gap in, some stats for you, just to provide some context. The gap in productivity growth over those 30 years between construction and other major industries is 33%. And you go, wow, what does that mean, John? Well, if you apply that 33% to another statistic, Australian Bureau of Statistics statistic, that's hard to say quickly.
Did well, though.
Which is the gross value add, like the GDP, if you like, for the construction industry. You currently get a number in excess of $60 billion a year. That is the opportunity. If we could close that gap in productivity growth between us and other major industries, that is our opportunity. So just on its own, $60 billion, massive number. But you could convert that to people. And if you converted that to people, you go, we don't have a people problem anymore. So the opportunity is massive, and it always amazes me, given the size of the opportunity, that we've never really focused on it at all, really, historically. So that is the context. What are the things that we can be doing? We can. There are lots of things, but there are lots of barriers. Things like think of barriers here. On projects, we have highly prescriptive specifications. So we might have a specification that says, for this table, you've got to use wood from Brazil. It's got to be kiln dried for 10 hours. It's got to have a veneer that's such and such a color from such and such a supplier. And you go, well, where's the innovation in making that table going to come from? We've got to relax those specifications. We've got to have allow for more outcome-focused specifications, performance specifications that say, well, instead of specifying how to make that table, I say, well, I want this piece of furniture that's going to allow 6 people to sit around it at a height of so-and-so, and it's going to last for 10 years, or something along those lines. That is an obvious answer. The opportunity. There are opportunities in terms of how we design stuff and how over-regulated we are. How currently on some projects there's 4 levels of design review. How in procurement we spend 6 months, we tie up 3 or 4 contractors for 6 months developing project draft traffic management plans that are never going to get read as part of tenders, and spend hundreds and hundreds of hours doing stuff that adds no value whatsoever. Even this, the one that you will like, specifically, each and every project, they'll say, can you send us the CVs for your key personnel? And it's got to be in this particular format. Why does it have to be in that format? So we'll waste maybe 20 hours just reformatting CVs. How often do you see that?
Yep. And let's even go into the fact that then a client will often say, this person must have done I'll use an example, a specific roads company, and must have done this roads type of contract in Queensland with this much experience. Whereas you could find someone with a transferable skill at a PM level that's built a different job that could come in and do that job.
And potentially also bring new thinking from different sectors. And in the current market, quite often the person that they're specifying is a unicorn as well. So so you've got all of this stuff. The thing is, we're not short of ideas. That's a great thing. And this is why we're currently working. So we did a report called Nailing Construction Productivity that said just this. And in fact, we put the ideas in the appendix. We said, look, here's just 10 ideas straight off the bat, because that's not the problem. The problem is removing the barriers. And to remove the barriers, what we say is we need a nationally focused approach to doing this. We need government, industry, and unions to come together to focus on this. And thankfully, the Commonwealth government said, yeah, righto, we're up for this. We'll work on this. So there is a construction strategy being developed, initially focused on transport infrastructure, but potential to be used elsewhere, that's looking at 4 elements. One, there's a procurement stream to this. So what role does procurement have to play in this? A workforce and culture stream, MMC and innovation for sure, and a piece on data, an important piece on data, because when we talk about productivity, you've got the ABS statistics, and even if you talk to economists, they don't know how they calculate those statistics. So you go, well, that's not a lot of use then, is it? So can we come up with a number of metrics that are all indicators of productivity? We all agree that they're indicators of productivity. We all know how to measure them, importantly. And then let's start to collect that data, anonymize it if we need to, benchmark it, share it, and start to use it so we can see what's working and what's not. Because at the minute, we're working blind. We think we have an idea that will make a difference and that will make a difference. But this will bring this all together. But the MMC piece, because you asked me specifically about MMC, I saw a really interesting article the other day, that LinkedIn post that just really struck a chord with me. And I thought, that's so spot on. Because when we talk about MMC, everyone, modern methods of construction, everyone's got different ideas about that. That's prefab. And I hate the word prefab, by the way. It just brings up these ideas of like post-war dongers and stuff like that. That's another thing that I could talk for ages about. But MMC could be something as simple as flexible, collaborative, efficient working, because we're not doing that at the minute, not across the board. That could be our modern methods of construction. And if we did just that, we would see, I'm sure, massive increases in productivity.
Absolutely. Now, the other thing we've spoken about before is rebranding the industry. And we've talked about the cultural shift. We've talked about what's possible. And from all accounts, from what I can hear, is if younger generations are thinking of coming into it, what an exciting time to come in and make change. I was very sad on the weekend. I was at my son's party, and I shared this story with you when we spoke before. And one of the parents said to me, my son loves Lego. He told me he would love a career in construction. And she goes, and I told him aim higher. And I went, yeah, it's really sad. And she said, why? And I said, because how much higher can you aim? I said, because these people are building our country's infrastructure. This is an amazing opportunity. And then I did go on a little bit about some of the different roles that were available. But it got me thinking, and I was curious. I said, why do you think that? And she goes, I've just been seeing in the media, companies going broke. She's like, so much, negativity and bullying. Like, I wouldn't want him to go into that environment. So it really got me thinking about this discussion with yourself around rebranding. Where has this negative stigma come from in some places and not everywhere? And how do we rebrand as a collective?
Yeah. I mean, good news doesn't sell newspapers, as they say.
Correct,
and so a lot of what you see in the newspapers and on the media is projects running over in time, in budget. You see industrial relations issues and some of that thuggish behavior, and you can see that as being typical of industry when it's not. Unfortunately, the good stuff doesn't get reported. I mean, just recently in Sydney, they opened up a section of the new metro. Fantastic, all the positive stuff about how good is this piece of infrastructure. Everyone loves it. I love it. When I go down there, I jump in on it all the time. And but do you see when they're cutting the ribbon, do they talk about and name the contractors that are involved in and the design consultants that are involved? They don't do that. You'll see on LinkedIn the individual companies will do stuff around that. But no, I think there is for sure an opportunity there, and that we've got to get smarter with that. We're just starting a little bit. In fact, today, it's quite coincidental that today, I forgot to mention this to you, we got a grant from Infrastructure New South Wales Women in Construction program to do an attract campaign focused on sort of women that are already started their careers and trying to convince them about the opportunities that exist within construction for them. And it's all called It's Possible. So impossible with the IM struck out, it's possible. And it has a number of case studies of women that have made that transition and why they've made that transition. Because you know what? It's fun. There's more money in it as well. And you get that satisfaction of being part of something. I always remember, and just to show just how relevant and important that is way back when I did this job, was involved in this project, which was building this pretty dull concrete gravity substructure for the North Sea. So basically, the legs and the box on which this oil rig was going to sit, gas platform was going to sit in the North Sea. But it was actually a pretty cool structure. And every day I'd be going to the dry dock and be part of this thing and then all the rest of it. And then one day the job's finished and the thing has to go out to where it has to be. So it wasn't staying put. And then coming back to that dry dock the next day and this thing wasn't there. And they floated it out to where it was going to be. And it was like, because you're so proud of, unfortunately, that thing you can't see unless you go sailing out in the North Sea. But you do get such a good feeling from and a feeling of purpose that you've achieved something lasting out of this. And so this campaign talks to that. But I think, and it's a trial campaign specifically targeted at a certain cohort of people that we're trying to get into the industry. But I think we need to do something more broader than that, along the same lines.
I think so too. And interestingly, there are women interested in making the transition. And I know that because it is something that I get asked about. I say, can you give this person advice? How do I get into the industry? And a lot of the times the barriers also exist, to be honest, with recruitment and HR in opening their minds and being more innovative around how they challenge some of the hiring demands that they're told. Like I can think of a contracts administrator. She's been promoted 3 times. She still works 4-day week. The contractor gave us the role on 5 days. I said, is there any reason this couldn't be done on 4 days? If you had an amazing person, okay, we'll have a look at it. Look at the person's progression is just proof enough. But unless we challenge things like that or look laterally or look at other markets, unless we as a collective, as an industry, and it also is not just HR and recruitment, it's also the hiring managers that are looking at this that need to start to think what else could be possible. And I guess my question to you is, if we do want to do something like this where we're attracting people from adjacent industries into construction, and I love the idea, by the way, what are your thoughts around how we shift the thinking of the industry to accept them and support them?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a big challenge, for sure. And I think it's just people are going to be put in that position where they're just going to have to get creative because the people just aren't going to be there. And that's how it's going to come about. I think there are some people that are starting to think differently. I'm going to talk about a company that's not actually one of our members. I'm hoping it is going to be one of our members.
Oh, yeah, great.
A company, a couple of innovative people that set up a company called Capital Group in Melbourne, and they operate in the NT as well, and they're looking to expand a commercial building outfit.
Mm-hmm.
And they recognise that we need to be moving to a 5-day week, but there are challenges. Sometimes construction has to operate on the weekend, so let's ensure that people are working no more than 5 days in any given week. And how they're looking at doing that, and there's a lot of companies doing that. A lot of our members looking doing that. The Culture Standard is trying to drive that as well. But one of the things I thought was really innovative about what they were doing, they said, look, another problem, let's couple two problems together, kill two birds with one stone, so to speak. We've got people leaving the industry early, especially site supervisors, site project managers, and the likes. And because basically they're done in, they've had enough, and they don't want to continue working the hours. And to introduce some of these sort of shift working and rosters, you have to start to get a bit creative, and it does initially maybe require more people. And so that what they're doing is that they're saying to some of the people that otherwise would leave the industry, well, here's a gig for you. How do you fancy working 3 days a week? And you come in and support us with this rostering by covering off on that 3 days there, that 3 days there. And not, by the way, while you're doing that, how's about mentoring these people that are coming up through the business? Fantastic. This is the sort of creative stuff that we need to be looking at doing.
So many people I've seen, actually particularly in New South Wales recently, there's some people that I know that retired and came back on 3 days. And a few of them come back in quite senior roles. One of them I know came back as a CEO, and I had a little joke because I thought he'd never stop working, and he still isn't stopping. But a lot of the people that are in the industry that are looking towards retirement or wanting to switch back, this industry's in their blood. They've done it. That they will find it really hard to stop. So why would we just lose all that IP? I completely agree. Why would we not rethink the way that we structure a role as well? If you need, say, a commercial manager, is there any reason you couldn't have an experienced commercial manager 3 days a week and a senior CA or even a CA, and have that commercial manager mentoring for those really, high level legal and financial issues? Because it's a double win. You're upskilling, and then you're not losing that IP. I love that idea.
And the other idea, and similar to that, is the idea of it's a lean concept called value stream mapping, where you basically look at a process and you work out what is adding value and what's not adding value, and in this particular case, is the right person doing the job. So if you take the role of an engineer, for example, over a period of time, engineers are being asked to do more and more stuff that they weren't taught at uni. I always remember this came when I first came to Australia, and I was working as a commercial manager on one of the busway projects. And, as a quantity surveyor, I'm taught to do forecasting, cost forecasting. And I come on that job and I was told, no, John, you don't do that. The engineers do that. Oh, okay, well, happy days. I'm one less thing that I have to do. Fine. And I observed this, and every month what would happen is the engineers would get themselves into a right pickle around, oh, God, I've got to do that forecasting shit that I wasn't taught how to do. And oh, no. And I hate doing this stuff. And all the while that they're doing that, they're not doing what they're trained to do. And so as soon as they get that, and they usually, enough time has passed now for me to say they usually stuffed it up, and then you'd have to go back in and help them fix it up. And then they'd all be rushing around going, oh, shit, I need to do all this stuff that I should have been doing, the engineering stuff. Anyway, value stream mapping, why are we asking them to do that? Why don't we get someone that's trained to do that, or someone that's potentially lesser skilled to do that can do that? We can train them up to do that. And we just get them doing the high-value engineering stuff that we want them to do, that they're happy doing. And that's the sort of thing that we've got to get smart about, I think, as an industry.
Yeah, that's a great example in terms of getting them to do what they're, trained and studied to do, and getting that support from that commercial side.
But the other thing, I keep thinking I haven't answered one of your previous questions really well. Now, how do we get that flexibility to get people that are raising young families and give them the flexibility. One of the things is we've got these rigid structures about doing stuff on site. Everyone's got to be on site, I don't know, depending on time of year, 5:30, 6 o'clock for the pre-start. Everyone's got to be there for a pre-start. Why do they have to be there for the pre-start? In this day and age, can we not get to the stage where we have pre-starts on our phones? That people can do a pre-start, can come in halfway through the day, do the pre-start. It's recorded on the phone that they've done the pre-start. Everyone's happy that they've done the pre-start. And we start to break down some of these barriers. The other barrier is that annoys me substantially is rostered days off, fixed rostered days off. So we have a situation where here in Queensland, I can't remember, 26, 28 days of the year are fixed RDOs. So on that day, site shut down. And usually it's the sunniest day of the week. They come back on the Tuesday, it's peeing it down the back in the sheds again. And you go, well, why do we do this? I get the concept of RDOs, and surely if we can move to reducing the hours people work, then ultimately the need for RDOs disappears. But that's something for the future. But at this point in time, why do we have fixed RDOs? We have fixed RDOs because it makes it easier for the unions to police whether people are getting the RDOs, because they can just drive by if the crane's going, oh, something's wrong here. But again, modern technology, we should be able to get to a stage whereby we can ensure that people are getting their entitlements another way. And then we're essentially adding back a whole month into the calendar again. So this is probably another productivity example, but it's a flexibility example. It's an example of ingrained practices that need to be challenged within our industry.
Absolutely. And one of the things I want to touch on that you said before about engineers and then, the contract side of things in terms of the quantities and having to do that piece of work, but their degrees train them for different skills. One thing that blew my mind a couple of weeks ago is I went to a free leadership course on a Saturday. It was run by a good friend of mine, Felicity, who is a civil engineer, ran projects, and then went out and founded this leadership business. I won't lie, I went, geez, these people work long hours. I said to her, do you think like a whole bunch of them are going to show up? 40 of them showed up. And they were all working in construction infrastructure, 40 first-time leaders, 40 people that are saying, I am going to give up. I work long hours already. I'm going to give up my Saturday because I'm passionate about becoming a leader and learning how to be a leader. So if that doesn't tell you there's demand out there for people to either reshape their roles or learn skills, then I don't know what else does.
That's a really good point. And so back to your question around how do we change the culture of the industry? I am passionate and believe that, so we do run leadership courses, whether they be employer organized courses or courses that people take up themselves. I think that we need to ensure that those courses have sufficient focus on human skills. So this isn't just about management and that side of things. I think we sometimes get confused between leadership and management. And leadership, a big part of that is being able to communicate, being able to listen, and to be to show empathy. And that, I think, is a really big opportunity for improving the culture of our industry, how we focus on those leaders and those leaders then ultimately leading by example.
Absolutely. And I know when costs are tight, because I have worked myself in recruitment and learning and development, and I know when costs are tight, it can sometimes feel like learning and development's the first place that you cut the budget, but it's actually, to me, is just the place you need to be investing, because if you've got your people and you're not going to be able to hire or afford to hire, then you damn well need to be investing in them and developing them too. So I 100% agree with you. And the fact is, what made me feel really positive is that the fact that people are coming on their weekend when they already work long hours, some of them may have even worked that morning or jumped onto site. tells you that the demand's there. So we as an industry can shift to meet that. So my question now is around you personally, because there's so much that you're involved in, but I'm keen to understand from everything that you're doing, everything that you're involved in, what is the legacy that you want to leave in the industry?
Oh, you didn't give me a heads up on that question, did you? What is the legacy?
It's always my surprise question.
Yeah, okay.
Because I want it to be your legacy.
Yeah, I don't think about things in terms of maybe people saying we've got Jon to thank for that or something like that. But I do want to see an industry. Here's one. Okay, an industry that other industries look up to, an industry that people look and say it is possible to change. It is possible to change the culture. It is possible to change ingrained behaviors, and to be an industry that people, the next generation go, that's the industry that I want to be in there. That's the industry that really excites me. That's an industry with great culture and a forward-looking industry. Maybe that's mission impossible in terms of a legacy. But I think, as we said at the start, I honestly do believe that this is the year we will start to see change. I do think the year of the snake, shedding skin, I think it's actually quite prophetic because I think that we, for all of the reasons I've talked about, will actually start to see positive change in that direction.
And I wanted to share with the listeners and get you to tell us a bit about your upcoming conference. It's going to be...
Oh, thank you for that. Yeah,
because it's going to be held in Brisbane as well.
A shameless plug. So we're calling this a forum as opposed to a conference. Okay. We did run a couple of conferences ourselves and got the feedback. Great day and all the rest of it. But so what? What happens afterwards? And also, how do I get more involved? How do I be part of the conversation? And so he said, let's do something differently. How can we shake this up again? How can we get this to be a conversation? And so we looked around and said, well, where are some good examples of this? And we looked around in the construction industry. No, nothing. With all due respect to my association peers and all the rest of it, nothing that what we're trying to aim for here. We look to other industries. Nothing there either. And so we thought, well, what else is there? And we thought, well, the COP Climate Change Summit, the Davos Economic Summit, where they're bringing leaders together for a conversation. They're bringing industry together for a conversation. And certainly in terms of the COP Summit, they're holding themselves accountable. They're setting themselves targets. They're coming back again next year and saying, how well did we do on that? And if we've ticked that box, what's the next one? How can we push that further? And that's where we came up with the name for it, which is Foundations and Frontiers. Foundations, obviously, in industry connotation there, but we've actually done some stuff. We were not starting from scratch here. We've got some foundations there. But how do we push on to those next frontiers? And so this is all about the conversation. We have a leaders exchange the night before. We bring that conversation into the day. We have the leaders involved come into that next day. We have some. We try to explore concepts in a fun way. There's no comfy sofas on the stage. None of that. Comfy sofas banned. We have a circular stage in the middle, specifically in the middle, so that those that are on the stage don't feel comfortable talking. They are thinking about what they're saying. And we did some game show themed stuff to make it fun. This year we're thinking of doing something Family Feud. Everyone's heard of Family Feud. Yeah. We're thinking of doing a construction feud where we try to see if we really understand each other from a stakeholder perspective. So all of that is going to happen. And again, to keep things different, that will happen in Nissan Arena, basketball court, 4 sides,
Love
everyone
it.
looking down. Good AV and stuff happening there. We were given the opportunity of having a boxing ring in there as well. We thought, maybe that's taking it a bit too far. But so that will be happening 6th of August. Foundations and Frontiers is the website. You'll be able to see the leaders that have already signed up for that. Hopefully soon we'll be publishing the agenda for that. But the overarching theme, back to what I said before, is how do we move the industry from me to we?
I love it. And I love the basketball arena in a different location. I think that it's going to, mix up people's ways of thinking and disrupt a bit, because if so many people are in meetings every day, that having that kind of environment will naturally itself just get the psychology in the brain thinking a little differently too. So I love how you've put so much thought into laying that all out. Now, the next few ones are the rocket round. And no, I did not prepare for you this because this is just a bit of fun.
The rocket round, eh?
Rocket round.
Right,
so it's to learn more about you. Coffee or wine?
Coffee or wine?
Yeah.
Oh, wine, without a doubt. Yeah.
Well, I know because we've got a tea, right?
Yeah,
so I kind of knew the answer to that one.
Yeah.
Cats or dogs?
I'm a dog person.
And favourite holiday destination?
Oh, well, I am from the UK, so I go back there. But I'm really looking forward to going to Greece this year.
Ooh, nice. And podcasts that you listen to?
Podcasts that I listen to. I am very into The Rest is Politics US at the moment because obviously a lot going on there and it's having a huge impact on everything we do. So any insights I can get into that, the more the better.
Oh my gosh! If my husband is obsessed with US politics, so if he's listening to this, I'm sure that's one now we'll be listening to.
But now I should say it will be yours as well. Yours is added to the list as well.
Oh, thank you, thanks, Jon. And what makes you feel like you're home?
What makes me feel like I'm home, as in country-wise, or as in
home? So, what is that feeling you get? And what brings that feeling when you finish the day and what makes you feel like you're home?
Well, unfortunately, there's 2 things that are linked together. Your previous question about dogs would be being greeted by my old Cocker Spaniel, but unfortunately, Daisy passed away a few months ago,
I'm sorry.
which was very sad. And so my wife and I are currently debating whether we get another dog or not because just seeing under the shadow under the door.
If this episode gave
Daisy
you new insights,
around, waiting
don't
for me
let them
to
go to
come home.
waste.
That
Take
would be
action.
tough.
Apply
I'm
them.
probably the
And
worst
if you
person
want
to
more
tell that
insider
to, Jon,
strategies
because
from the
I have
best
4
in
dogs
construction and infrastructure,
and
make
used to
sure
do
to
a lot with
subscribe.
animal rescue. So
Share
now
this
you're
with
probably
someone
going
who
to be
needs to hear
sent
it.
loads
And
of
remember,
Cocker
the
Spaniel
leaders who
rescue
open
dogs
the
that you
most
didn't
doors
ask
aren't
for.
waiting for
My wife will be
opportunities.
very grateful for that.
Your
yeah.
wife and I would get along well.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. I really appreciate your time, and I really encourage everybody listening to this, get behind the upcoming forum, get involved because, the more people we have there, the more we can have a voice and shift the thinking and move towards, what do we call it? The frontiers that we want and the future that we want for the industry. So thank you so much.
No, thank you. And everyone, please feel free to reach out and connect with me on LinkedIn and get involved.
Yep. Like, subscribe, share, rate, review, all of the above. And definitely make sure you get behind that conference.
If this episode gave you new insights, don't let them go to waste. Take action. Apply them. And if you want more insider strategies from the best in construction and infrastructure, make sure to subscribe. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, the leaders who open the most doors aren't waiting for opportunities, they're building them.